Right, well, we better start. I'm the immediate past president as we speak, but today would have been handover day. And in history, in 1189, Richard the Lionheart became King of England following the death of Henry II. In 1483, Richard III was coronated after deposing Edward V. So in 2020, it is Palm Deep that takes over as president of the Rotary Club of Leicester, very similar to those events in history. Next week, Palm Deep and I will be giving our presentations, my reflections on the year, Palm Deep on the year ahead. So that's something to look forward to. There are lots of thank yous, lots of things to say. Those will be said next week. And for now, the simple task of this particular handover is to ask if President Palm Deep could now take over the meeting from me.
Thank you, Chris. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right, great. Okay, so I'm looking forward to this. Let's get going. So I'd just like to start with welcoming any guests or visiting Rotarians. I know we have Swasti, welcome. We have Anand as well, joining us live from Delhi. So we're very much looking forward to your talk a bit later on. Any greetings from other clubs?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
I would like to just remind everybody about Barry's email, which went out the other day, just giving a very detailed feedback on the visit that was made to the hotel and the sort of situation at this point. Barry, would you like to say a few words about that? And I know you've had some feedback from members as well.
I've had a couple of comments from members who found it helpful. Clearly, there's much uncertainty as to whether and when we will be going back, because not only does Leicester have to leave the additional restrictions that it's facing at the moment, the national guidance needs to change as well before we will be allowed to resume lunches. So the very earliest we in the hotel thought, as I said in the note, that we might meet again for lunch is the 27th of July, but it may be later.
Okay. Thank you, Barry.
That was gloomy and doom-ridden, wasn't it? But
Yes.
Richard will brighten us up later.
It's the haircut that does it.
Larry, what are they doing about the room? Where are they proposing to put us?
In the same room that we normally meet, but with obviously a much reduced number of people there. 24 members in total have said that in principle they will come for lunch if they resume in July. I think it's unlikely that all 24 on any given Monday will be available to come for lunch. So there's likely to be, say, 16, 18, 20.
Is there any reason, Barry, why we couldn't use the King's Hall? There will be certainly adequate spacing if we use the King's Hall, even though we might have to raise our voices a little.
It's not an issue about space. It's an issue about the rules of numbers of households who are allowed to meet together. So it isn't a space thing. It isn't a problem with the room, which would have well spaced out tables with only 4 people on each one. It's an issue to do with what the national guidance says about gatherings.
What are they suggesting, Barry, as far as food service, because buffets are no longer part of it?
We're leaning towards a buffet, but not the buffet where one oneself, but one where the server serves. You tell the server what you want and they will serve it and plate it for you.
Okay. Any other questions from members? No? Okay. Thank you, Barry. Richard, would you like to give an update now or at the end of the... Oh, hang on. Let me. You might want to unmute yourself.
There we go. Right.
There we go.
Yeah, there's not a huge amount to say. I mean, obviously that isn't already in the public domain, other than that as I say, from on Thursday night, which is or Friday, which goes up to Thursday midnight. The data from the hospital was that the number of patients being treated for COVID was slowly but steadily falling. We still have the occasional patient who passes away with it, but as I said a bit earlier on, the overall mortality over the last 3 weeks is roughly the same as it was this time last year, and actually less than it was the year before. So you know, it's not. And as far as I'm aware, the majority of the increase in positive testing, which you'd expect anyway, because they've thrown, you know, shed loads of people into test in Leicester, have been within the working age population who are not, generally speaking, seriously afflicted by the virus. I mean, interestingly, I had my own antibody test done last week, and it's just positive, which implies that I have had COVID-19. I have to say I'm rather unaware of it, but anyway, there we go. And my presumed source of the infection has proved antibody negative, so you can work out from that what you will. And unfortunately, I think we're having the same issues with the antibody testing as we have with the antigen testing, is that there are quite a lot of false negatives. That's a different. It's very unlikely to be any false positives, but we look as though there are going to be quite a few false negatives, which rather throws into question the usefulness of it, as, other than from a research perspective, trying to work out, because obviously all the positives have had it. So from a research perspective, getting an indication of the overall number of people within the population as a whole who have had the virus. But you know, obviously the decision about when lockdown is released is one for the politicians and not us, and we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, obviously the increase in infections sort of started 2 or 3 weeks ago, and therefore one would expect that if there was going to be any knock-on effect in terms of hospital admissions, it would start to be kicking in by now, unless of course what we see is that those who've been infected are locked down at home with their elderly relatives, and then the elderly relatives catch it from them and then brought into hospital. But we can only wait and see. It does seem to be that, anecdotally, there's some relationship between the clusters of infection and some of the working practices within Leicester. But again, that's all anecdotal and not fully researched. So we will just have to wait and see how that turns out. But clearly, it's shone the light very much on some of the working practices within some of the businesses within Leicester, which no doubt will become more apparent as time goes on. But I think beyond that, I don't. Worldwide, as you know, I mean, I know, I get just the same information as you do from the press. It's there are spikes all over the world in various cities. Now, I think that's the likelihood is that's going to go on being the case for the foreseeable future. The question is how the response to those spikes will change because of changing attitudes and pressures around the world. We'll just have to wait and see. So I don't think I have any more to say that, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody's got any. I know Rodney's asked me about brain damage, and I did actually do a little bit of research behind this. There are 1 or 2 publications in the electronic literature suggesting that the virus has been identified as travelling up some of the neural pathways into the brain. Again, unfortunately, one of the problems we've had in this country is because of the fear of the staff doing post-mortems, we've largely not done any post-mortems on any patients who've died of COVID, which is unusual compared to previous diseases, which is a shame because it means that, I mean, one of the best ways to really get proper information about the behaviour of viruses is from post-mortem examination. So we rather missed out on that one. One would hope in other countries that they will have done that level of research. But again, that also, there's something that will come out in the future. But anyway, so I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
What's the position, Richard? What's the position about getting the post-infection test that you had?
The antibody test.
I mean, it was before the anything was announced in Britain, but I had 3 or 4 days, which were very strange symptoms and so on, in I think February or early March, and it would be. I suspect that it was a mild version of the virus.
As far as I know at the moment, and I, you know, I don't take this as gospel, the antibody testing is only relatively freely available to NHS staff. Yeah, okay. And I think they're going to get through the NHS staff and then make it more widely available. And again, I think because it's being pushed through at a relatively fast rate, I suspect that it's how fit for purpose it is as a test is going to be a little bit open to debate. I mean, I am aware of 1 or 2 anaesthetists who clearly got COVID-19 and they were tested positive with the antigen and then have tested negative with the antibodies. So again, those are obvious false negatives. So I'm not sure whether, I think if I were you in your position, I would assume you have probably had it on the basis, on the balance of probabilities, no more than that. Because that was the virus that was going around at the time causing upper respiratory illness, and still is.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Richard? No? Okay, well, thank you again, Richard. And hopefully the members have been keeping up with your updates. They're longer 20 to 25-minute recordings that Richard's been kindly doing every other week or so, I guess, every 2 to 3 weeks, and they've proven very popular. So you can watch those on YouTube, and if you'd like to send any questions in for future updates, by all means send me your questions or to Richard, and we can cover them on the call. So thanks again, Richard. Ed, did you want to say a few words about speakers?
Yes, thanks, Parmdeep. And just before I start, congratulations on becoming our president. Looking forward to a great year.
Thank you.
As we all know, external speakers are an integral part of Rotary Club meetings, particularly in Leicester. And I have just taken on the august role as lead speaker finder. And you will see in the bulletin for July that August, we have some spaces. And just as an appeal to those present here, I will send an email appeal out via Barry. If anyone knows of anybody who'd be willing to speak, either in person or remotely, to us for 15 to 20 minutes on a range of subjects. We want a nice broad range if we can. Please do let me know as soon as you can. It's my ambition to get quite a good program in hand, so we're not always scratching around. So just an appeal to those here and wider to please let me know if you know anyone who is willing to speak to us.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
There are 38 speakers willing to talk.
I have that, Rodney. I'm thinking in addition. So I have that list.
Yeah.
On that list, a number of people have already spoken to the club. I'm just trying to cast the net a little wider.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Ed. Any other comments or reports from the committee chairman before we move on to the speaker? Yes, Derek?
Just to say that I do keep in touch with Graham Moore, who was a member for many years, and they've moved down south somewhere. But you'd be very sorry to hear that his health is cracked rather badly. He doesn't always recognise his wife. He's got such discomfort with his back, he has to go to bed in the afternoons. He's in a sad way. You'd be sorry to hear that. But I thought I must let you know. And I do keep in close touch. When I rang up last week, Sally answered the phone. He didn't speak to me. So I thought you'd be sorry to hear that.
Yes, it was very good of you to keep in touch, and thank you for the update. Can we get hold of? I mean, sorry, Derek. Your volume seems very low. I'll just. Did everybody hear that?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you, Derek. So at this point, I'm going to move on to our speaker, and hopefully you've all had a chance to look up the organisation called the Robin Hood Army. I came across the organisation when on a trip to India. In March of this year, just before the country locked down, my wife and I went there and spent some time with one of my. Actually, she was an intern of mine, a girl who I did some work with maybe 10 years ago, and I just asked her what kind of things she does to help out in the community, and I told her a bit about Rotary, and she said she helps out in distributing meals to the less fortunate, and I thought nothing of it. And when we moved to Zoom meetings, I thought I'd get back in touch with her and just kind of see what, whether there are any people she knows in India that we could speak to and who could share what they're doing in India with us over Zoom, now that we're able to have speakers from anywhere in the world. And I was blown away when I started reading about this organization. They've, in 5 years, gone from 0 volunteers to nearly 60,000. They've served almost 32 million meals to the less fortunate. And that's all without raising any outside donations or funding whatsoever. So it's really a fascinating story, and it's really interesting, I think, learning experience in terms of the models that are out there where people are able to use technology to have a massive impact. So I'm really pleased to have Swasti to join us today, and she's going to tell us all about the Robin Hood Army. So welcome, and look forward to hearing what you've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I also have Anand from our team online. Hello. So yeah, hi Anand. So I'm just going to start, and thank you so much for sort of bringing us over virtually to do this talk. Last year, this time I was actually, as I told you, I was studying in the University of Cambridge, and I was right there in the country, and things have totally, it's a different world now. So yeah, I'll get started. So about the organization, Robin Hood Army is a voluntary organization. What we do is collect meals from restaurants, hotels, weddings, parties, and we distribute to the underprivileged. And it's a totally zero funds organization. So we don't collect funds for what we do. We do not take monetary donations. We started off, the idea was food waste management. So we started off there. And of course, now with the COVID situation, etc., we're also taking fresh food, we're taking food grains, etc., and distributing it. So I'm going to, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just quickly take you through this presentation. So yeah, like I said, the Robin Hood Army is a zero funds volunteer organization that works to get food from restaurants and communities to less fortunate people. We've served over 30 million meals. We're across 182 cities, which is also 10 countries. So we're not just only in India. We are in India, so a lot of South Asian countries. So India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. In Africa, we are in Uganda, Nigeria, and Botswana. We also have a chapter in Canada, which actually Rotary works majorly with. So the Canada chapter started off with someone from Rotary, and yeah, I think Rotary's played a big role in that particular chapter. And in Southeast Asia, we're in Philippines and Malaysia. So let me get this. So what do we do? And we call Robins.
Swasti, I think your sound is playing up. Hi, Swasti, I think your sound may be playing up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, it's a bit broken. Maybe your connection's a bit weak. Maybe try again. I think maybe it's just a connection issue for a sec or two. Let's.
The picture's frozen as well.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just a temporary glitch.
Mm.
Maybe she's just going to rejoin. But yeah, I must say it was fascinating to see how the organisation is able to match volunteers with restaurants and other organisations to collect the food and then distribute it to people who need the food. So it's the only thing is they're not in the UK. I think we have quite strict regulations around the distribution of leftover food. So she didn't mention that, but that is the reason she gave me as to why they're not in the UK yet.
Andy, how do they distribute the food? In private cars, or what's the position?
Yes, that's I believe that's how they do it. Yes. So what would happen is they have a social media hub, I suppose, maybe WhatsApp or something like that, and so there will be a message put on there to say, right guys, there's a restaurant, or 5 or 6 restaurants tonight have food, and I guess the volunteers would then use their own vehicles to drive over there, collect the food, and then distribute it to wherever it needs to go. They've also started an academy. So they've also started an academy which is actually involved in education. So now that they have these connections with young people, underprivileged, they're able to utilize these amazing volunteers that they have. I mean, the volunteer the girl that I know, she's first-class degree in computer science. She's working as a management consultant at Accenture in India. So very talented people. So they've got this pool of talented young people, and so they're having them go out and educate people in the community. So I think that's a wonderful thing that they're doing. I think she's just joining back in under a different.
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
Oh, no worries, you're back.
My laptop's giving me trouble, so it's sort of hung.
It's okay. We can hear you. We can hear you perfectly now.
I'm on my phone now, so I'll just take you through this orally. Won't be able to show you the presentation.
No worries.
Yeah, but yeah, so the idea, as I said, was we started off in 2014. We started off in Delhi with a group of 4 people. Thought this would, I mean, there's so many people in India which are sleeping just under flyovers and around the corners. And I mean, they just sleep empty stomach. So, I mean, a group of friends said, okay, let's just feed them and see where this goes. And then so we started off from there, and we sort of spread around. So we spread around in India and then into Pakistan. So what the model is, so supposing there are a group of people, so 4 people, 4 friends, we make a team, we connect with restaurants and caterers, and even so a lot of college hostels and college canteens. And so we tie up with them, and most of these places have surplus food at the end of the day, which they would throw off anyway. So it would be wasted. So what they do is they give it to us. And the volunteers, as I said, we call ourselves Robins. We collect the food and we distribute it to the people who are needy. So needy could be defined very differently in different countries, and even within India is very different. So in India, it could be someone on the streets. In some other country, it could be just shelter homes. So Canada, what they do is they distribute food to shelter homes. So it could be orphanages or people who go in rehabilitation centers and stuff like that. So what the model is to serve the people who need it the most. And why zero funds? Because it's very simple. Food is being wasted. It would have been thrown into the bins. We collect that food. The cost that a volunteer has to bear is a transportation cost of picking the food up and dropping it to the nearest area where the so-called underprivileged people are. So that is the cost which a volunteer bears themselves, and it's given to the person who needs it. So that is the model. It's very, very simple. Food is picked up and dropped off, and this happens. I mean, the concept, as you would see, is simple. It is something which happens in the UK. When I was in Cambridge, there were a lot of students doing this. What differentiates us now is that the network and the concept of zero funds is really appealing, and we are a brand now in terms of having so about 60,000 robins, as Pamdeep mentioned. We're across 10 countries. So that is what is now differentiating us from the others. We're focused now on spreading to developing, so to say, developing the global south, because that is where the need is the most in terms of people really dying of hunger, and especially in the whole COVID situation where people are unemployed, they don't have jobs, so they don't know where the next meal is going to come from in terms of government securities. While the government says the meals are being given, there are rural pockets where no one really reaches, and not even NGOs or the bigger organizations, they don't really want to take the risk of going deep into the deeper pockets. So what we're trying to do is fill that gap and find the people most in need and distribute food there. So simple model, and how we sort of function is through social media. How we've sort of propagated the whole idea and how we've grown from 4 volunteers to 60,000 is through the power of social media. So we're very active in Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. So every city, or what we call every chapter, will have their Facebook group. They'll have a WhatsApp group. And after every food drive, they will post pictures into these groups and sort of on their personal Facebook handles, etc. And that's how the word has spread. And that's how celebrities have connected with us. We have politicians who sort of vouch for us. And the President of India very recently sort of commemorated us for the work that we've been doing. And so we're also now a Harvard case study because of the unique model that we have of using zero funds and still managing to make the impact that we do. And so when I talk of impact, it's not just food that we distribute. What we try to do is when we go and serve a meal to someone, we also try to develop a bond with that person, try to understand what is their background, what is the reason that they are in poverty, what kind of job are they looking for, are they just, have they taken that easy route of begging and they don't want to work. So if that is the case, we'll try to intervene, try to sort of rehabilitate them. When we go, we teach the kids. So one is informal teaching. When we go, we'll just teach them maybe math or English and stuff like that. And then there is a formal teaching unit that we've started, which Pamdeep was mentioning, is a Robin Hood Academy, where what we do is we sort of train these kids for formal schooling, and then we get them admitted to schools. And if these kids are already going to school, what we do is try to polish their English and math, areas where these students really lag because of the backgrounds. They're all living in slums. They don't have proper houses. Their parents are working all day, and parents are not really keen on educating these children anyway because they want extra bed earners. So looking for these solutions, trying to fill these gaps. So we've now sort of have over 2,000 students who we've admitted into schools. The Robin Hood Academy piece right now is only in India and Pakistan, not in the other countries. But we're really looking to sort of scale this because we feel, I think, the future is bright when you have kids who've gone to school and are educated. So, and I think even during the whole lockdown, what we've tried to do is sort of do a little bit of online coaching. So, I mean, these kids don't have laptops, so digital technology isn't easy, but we try to call them up, give them exercises so that they feel engaged. So that is the Robin Hood Academy piece of it. And how we spread into different countries. So as I said, our focus is mostly on the global south. So Southeast Asia, South Asia, Africa, Latin America. We haven't had much success in sort of expanding into Latin America yet. We've tried Brazil, but it wasn't very successful. I think the whole challenge is that poverty is very different in different countries and different areas of the world. So that is something which we're struggling with right now. But Africa, we've sort of been successful. Again, poverty in Africa is very different from poverty in South Asia. What has worked in Africa is that we serve near expiry supermarket stuff, so vegetables, fruits, meat, near expiry juices, etc. So all these, anyway, these supermarkets want to discard. So what they do is they reach out to us and they give it to us in bulk, and then we go distribute it to sort of the rural areas in Africa. Botswana is one of our like sort of success stories where we've been able to do this really, really well. We've been able to execute this well there, and Uganda and Nigeria, as I mentioned. So, and how we sort of, in terms of how we've been staying connected with all our volunteers is fortunately or unfortunately through WhatsApp. So every city or every volunteer is on WhatsApp groups. They're city-wise WhatsApp groups. And we sort of post our drive updates there. We do all our discussions on these WhatsApp groups. And that's what has really has kept us connected. And yes, I think that is what is the basic model. Anand, do you think I've missed anything in terms of the basics of our whole model?
About everything, more or less okay.
Okay, so I'll just pause there, and if you guys have any questions, and then we'd like to talk about a mission, sort of a mission 30 million that we are working on right now, where we sort of want to serve 30 million meals between 1st July and 15th August. And that is something which is ongoing right now, where all 10 countries are sort of working towards this goal. And it's a 60-day sort of a mission where we're going to serve another 30 million meals. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. Some pretty mind-boggling numbers there. So do we have any questions from Rotarians? Thank you for your talk. Swasti?
Swati, is there a benefit system in India and Pakistan? I mean, it's okay to feed somebody on one day, but they're hungry the next day. Don't you need something more permanent, either government support or financial support from other quarters?
Yeah, so I mean, that is definitely there. What we try to do is obviously do this on as regular basis as possible. So we do have office canteens and school canteens, sort of food that sort of goes to these people on a regular basis. But to your question, there is a government benefits system, but then there are a lot of people living in slums or just living on the streets who are nomadic and sort of miss out on this. So even with, so the government announced this whole emergency package for COVID, and people have got meals, so they're going to get rations and groceries till up till November. But then there are people who've been left out because either they are nomadic, they don't have adequate identity cards and stuff like that. So they sort of miss out on this. And that's the reason why we, organizations like us, we sort of need to step in and yeah, just do what we can at our level.
Thank you.
I hope I could answer your question.
I wanted to ask you a question about, yes, I'd like to ask you a question about the derivation of the name of the organisation. Is it robbing the rich to give to the poor?
Yeah, exactly. I should have actually started off with that. I am really sorry. So yeah, it is from Robin Hood legend, where he stole from the rich to give to the poor. We don't steal, but we do sort of take from the rich and reach out to the underprivileged. Yeah, so you're absolutely correct.
Yes, Nick, you might need to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Clive.
I'm very interested to hear what you're doing, and it sounds absolutely remarkable what you're doing. You mentioned you'd done something similar in the UK, in Cambridge. Are there not big problems in the West with all sorts of temperature controls and regulations that make moving food around really quite difficult?
Yeah, so I had not done this as a part of Robin Hood Army because of these food safety laws and even issues with respect to not taking monetary donations. But what I was referring to is that there are organizations who do food waste management and run food banks even in the UK. So, I mean, the idea might not seem, what I was referring to was that people do this at their own level in all countries. But what we're trying to do is sort of do it through zero funds and yeah, so that is what is unique and sort of differentiates us from the organizations in the more developed countries. But also adding to that, we're not able to run this program in the United Kingdom or countries like Australia or a lot of the European countries as well because of the food safety laws. And if I mean, what the rules in the UK would require us to register as a certain kind of organization and do monthly compliances and take money. So that is something which we're not, which we do not do, and that's the reason why we've not been able to sort of spread this in some of the other or some of the more developed, or so to say, global north. If I would want to put it like that. So even our Canada chapter has sort of had issues around that. So we've tried to sort of, they're functioning on a slightly different model from our other sort of Asian and African countries.
Thank you.
Nick, you had a question?
Yes, sorry about the muting issue. My question, when you deliver this food to people, do you have local centres that people come to, or do you actually go out and find the people who are in need of the food?
We actually do go. So we have, I mean, since that we've been operating in a lot of our cities for really long, we now have a lengthy list of places with Google sort of map pinned, and we sort of reach out to these places and give it to the slums. So it could be a center of a slum and people sort of queue up there and they come and take the food from us, but it's mostly us going to those localities and then they would queue up and take the food. So it's not, these people are not really in, I would say, in a condition to really go a long distance and collect the food from us. So it is us who needs to do that.
Okay, thank you. We've got time for one more question.
Can we ask what your colleague Anand, we've got a picture of him, what does he do with the organization?
Okay, hi. Okay, I coordinate South Asia expansion and growth, basically. So, like, if any country is facing any difficulties in how to grow there, so I coordinate with them and getting things resolved as per our compliances and other related things.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Swasti, you wanted to mention your challenge, your 60 days. That sounds great. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is one of our bigger sort of mega events, and because of the whole COVID situation and all countries sort of going into lockdown, we decided that what we really need to do, or what I think Robin Hood Army is really sort of now equipped to do, and is to sort of serve people who've been hungry, who don't know where the next meal is going to come from, right after the lockdown sort of opens up. So between 1st July to 15th August, so a period of about 6 weeks, we have a target set for about 30 million meals. And how we plan to do it is, so we've done these mega events earlier. Last year, around 15th August, we had a 3-day event where we served around 6 million meals across, I think, across some 100 chapters. And we also went out to 600 plus villages, but that was only India. This year, what we've done is sort of do this globally. The whole idea is, of course, to reach out to people who need it the most. And how we're doing it is through partnerships with non-governmental organizations, with corporates, and local communities. So we've been reaching out to them. So we're all out in the media. We're all out on radios and social media, and big partnerships with NGOs. So why NGOs is because we don't take funds. So NGOs who sort of crowdfunded money or taken funds, they buy the food for us and we then partner as the distribution partners. So the same with corporates, they buy the food for us, or they sort of, if they already are FMCG companies, they give near expiry food to us and we go distribute that. So that is the model that we're using. And yeah, we're sort of confident that we'll probably reach our 30 million meal target. It does seem achievable. Pakistan, for that matter, did 1.5 million meals in 3 weeks during the lockdown with huge partnerships with Nestle, Cadbury, and some of the other bigger FMCG companies which are there. And they also tied up with some of the larger NGOs to do that. So that is what we're at right now. So that's something which is going on world over. And yeah, I think something other than the mission that I would like to add is we're very active with Rotary and Roundtable have been sort of supporting us in India, Canada, and some of the other countries. So with volunteer support and food donations. And so yeah, that is a model that we sort of use for some of our mega events as well.
That's great, thank you. I have a feeling you'll be doing something in the UK at some point. So when you do, you've got my mobile number, and give us a call because we'd love to help you guys out once you come to the UK.
Definitely.
You can find a way to do something here. So thanks once again. It's been really great to have you on, and I'm pleased all the technical glitches got sorted out in the end. You know, we have to kind of bear with this stuff. We are on a live call to Delhi, so I'm glad it worked out well. So next week will be our formal handover day. Oh, hang on, we've got a hand up from a couple of people. Richard, sorry, and Rodney, do you want to say something? I'm just gonna, you need to unmute yourselves.
No, I was just clapping. I was clapping.
Oh, I clapped. Sorry, I thought it was a hands up.
The yellow is clapping. The thumbs up is you agree with it. And just for other people, to raise your hand is on the participants list. And Palmdeep, thank you for looking at the participants list, which doesn't always happen.
No. Sorry, yeah, I'll get used to this. So thanks for the claps, guys. I'm sure they're very much appreciated. So next week will be our formal handover day. We'll be joined by the new ADG, Eddie Pearson. Chris, as I said before, will be updating us on his year. And I also look forward to presenting my plan for the year. So thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good week. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you very much.